Hi, my name is John Santucci, and today I'm going to present to you Elon Musk versus Steve Jobs. We're going to see how they connect the dots in different ways. And now we're going to see how Elon Musk connects the dots to improve society. Elon Musk first sees the need in society. Then he develops a business case using his business background. After that, he uses his science background to analyze the problem and see if it's feasible. After that, he does the math and physics and then presents the solution. Elon Musk first sees the bigger picture. He doesn't like to focus on the little things he can solve. He likes to see the bigger picture, and then he likes to connect the dots from all of his background. His background is it's mostly in business, physics, automation, software, manufacturing, and then he incorporates vertical integration with all of his other businesses. He started school 1 year early. He was a book reader, so he liked to read books a lot. He believes that the U.S. is the land of opportunity, and you can see that he really not only took advantage of the opportunity, but he gave back to the community as well through all of his inventions and contributions to society. He's had an interest in computing early on, even at the age of 10, and that's when he started coding. And overall, he was pretty much an outlier. He wasn't like your usual kid. And early in his career, he focused on the internet, sustainable energy, and space technology. So these fields, they kind of relate to each other through science, but it's hard. He uses them to connect the dots and to help to use vertical integration. So every single field that he's trying to improve in society has the most information accessible to them. So his education was in Queen's University in Canada, and then he went to the Wharton Business School. And then after that, he went to get his PhD in engineering physics, but he dropped out because he was working on PayPal. And so this is Elon Musk's educational background. And this is the dots that he uses to connect to help contribute to society and build his tech empire. So as undergraduate, he learned physics and business, and he uses these to create his vision. So he uses math in both physics and in business, and he just reads nonstop on different subjects to see if other subjects can help him with any projects he's working on. And we can see how he's changed things today. We usually use email for our mail. We don't use regular mail too often. We use mostly PayPal for different transactions on eBay or any online purchases. He makes everything user-friendly, and he's working on a lot of solar energy projects like Tesla, and he's also trying to go to space with Dragon capsules, and maybe we could see if we can colonize Mars. You can see how he uses his past experience to try to solve problems society's facing in different ways. So with his One Zip 2 company, he wrote a software that essentially replaced all the yellow pages for businesses. And if you don't know what yellow pages are, it's this yellow book that's really big, and it has lists of phone numbers in them. I know it sounds silly because you can just look in your contacts now, but originally he wrote the software that kind of made the yellow pages go out of business pretty much. The other company he made, it was called xcom.com, but now it's PayPal. And again, like we said before, this has been used in pretty much almost any online transaction. People use either PayPal or Bitcoin, and it's pretty much changed how we do online commerce. And then SpaceX was made in 2001, and this was a private institution, of course, because he owned it. And it was the first one that ever sought to go out in space and do any space projects. And then Tesla was his environmental business because he loved cars and he wanted to start focusing on renewable energy. Tesla is Elon Musk's business that focuses on the environment and creating a greener economy. And Tesla connects the dots for Elon Musk's interests because he likes cars and he also likes helping the environment. The company gets a lot of tax rebates and green loans, but it's different from Solar City because Solar City is focused solely on the environment, where Tesla is also focused on cars. And in 2013, he won Car of the Year, and now he's trying to work on a self-driving car. SpaceX is Elon Musk's other company that focuses on going into space because that's one of his other interests. He wants to colonize Mars, but the main societal need that he's addressing is to reduce the cost of space transportation via commercialization. And he uses his physics and business background to achieve this. He originally had 2 rockets crash when he was trying to get them into space. But by the 3rd time, it got into space, and he was the first owner of a private company to get a spaceship into space. And we can see Elon connecting the dots through his vertical integration. He uses some of the systems and softwares that he's created in other companies, and he incorporates them with his SpaceX projects. Right now, he has the most efficient engine produced. Elon Musk first sees a problem in society and then uses his background to connect the dots and find a solution. He also connects the dots through his integration of his other companies. He accepts that failure is a part of succeeding because through his failures, he's able to learn from what he's done wrong, and then he fixes it. And now we're going to go on to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born in San Francisco, California in 1955. His biological parents were unmarried at the time, so they gave him up for adoption. And he spent his childhood in Mountain View, California, with his adoptive parents, Paul and Clara Jobs. And he went to high school at Homestead in Cupertino, California. For his education, his biological parents wanted him to go to college, so they gave him up for adoption. They said that that's what he had to do. Ironically, he dropped out of Reed College after his first semester in 1972, but he still, because he liked to learn, he just dropped out because he didn't like the general ed courses. So he still remained on the campus for 18 months, and he took courses that actually had nothing to do with computers. He took calligraphy courses and other art courses, and they actually helped to create the simplicity in his design. And this is where Steve Jobs starts to connect the dots. So in 1974, he traveled to India, and he studied Zen Buddhism. And this shaped his focus in product simplicity. And you can tell with the iPhones too, everything's simple. It has either 1 or 2 buttons. Buddhism, however, didn't calm his patience because he still got very annoyed at his employees because he was very demanding of them. So if they weren't performing to what he thought was their maximum capability, he would be very angry. So Apple was founded by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak on April 1st, 1976. And Steve Jobs was only 21 years old at the time. And he wanted to create a simple, user-friendly interface for customers. And this incorporates his Buddhism because he wanted simplicity. He started making the Apple I in his garage. And the first products didn't have monitors or keyboards, so they were too simple back then. The monitors and keyboards were added in 1977, and the Apple II was made in 1978, and it provided the first color graphics. And this was very important because it was user-friendly, and most people at the time businesses did not care about the color in their computers. It was only, I guess, your average user that cared about that. And when Apple went public in 1980, it made $117 million. Steve Wozniak left Apple in 1983, and he's the guy in the far right in the picture. So after he left, Steve Jobs hired PepsiCo's John Scully to be Apple's CEO. But Scully was upset with Jobs' demanding behavior, and Mr. Simon always said that Jobs demanded so much from the people who worked for him that was a part of his greatness. But it was also a weakness because a lot of employees left because they didn't like how demanding he was. Because Steve Jobs felt that if you weren't performing to your best, then you shouldn't be there. And this led Scully to vote him out in a board meeting, and that changed Steve Jobs forever. So protocols are standards that determine how data is transferred between systems, and two systems must be using LAN or WAN protocol to communicate. LAN, or local area network, is a network that spans a small area, and then wide area network is a wide area. This is important because in the late 60s, there was a demand for computers in universities and research labs, and they needed high-speed interconnections, and LAN provided this. So the early commercial LAN technologies were created in the 70s, and Cambridge Ring was one LAN that was made at Cambridge University in 1974. Ethernet was developed at Xerox PARC in 1974, and ArcNet was made by DataPoint Corporation in 1976, and it was released in 1977. So this emergence of LAN networking helped Jobs not only promote his desktops, but also incorporate them with the new technology. And since LAN was becoming popular, Apple also took this opportunity to create new ways to save information besides just communicating with other computers. And they did this by creating the floppy disk in 1978. And those are those big disks, and they weren't too cumbersome, but they were cumbersome compared to USBs nowadays. You would put them in a desktop, and it would show any files or information you've saved on that floppy disk. And then there were also other protocol softwares, and they just grouped them into families. And one of them was the Apple computer and the Apple Talk, and this is what Steve Jobs mostly used. So then we're going to talk about the throughput and Apple's perspective on it. So throughput is the rate of production, or the rate bits over time unit at which something is processed between the sender and the receiver. When it came to Apple's throughput, Steve Jobs wanted fast data throughput for user-friendly experience because he wanted things to be simple, and he felt that if you couldn't get the information in time, then most of his consumers wouldn't want to buy his product. So Jobs was quoted several times during his proposal saying the network can't handle the speeds or data throughput, and the designs are too big and clunky. So he wanted things to be simple and easy and effective and efficient. So one of the products that does this is the Airport Extreme, and it combines a router, a network switch, wireless access point, and NAS. And we can see the LAN throughput, and that's really good time compared to the 5th and the 4th generation. And then you can see all of his other throughputs, and you can see that they're actually very good and quick. Another one of Apple's inventions is the Thunderbolt 3.0, and it can transfer data at speeds of up to 40 gigabytes per second, and this is twice as fast as its predecessor, and it gives the fastest connection to any dock, display, or device, and it's also a power cable too. And you can't talk about Steve Jobs without his best invention, or his most well-known, the iPhone. And the iPhone basically revolutionized the phone. It gave a simple touchscreen interface, and it combined the abilities to make calls, check social media, access the internet, and purchase apps. And that's why, as of last year, 44.6% of smartphone users had an iPhone. So the iPhone uses an iOS, and their architecture has 4 parts. The highest level works as an intermediary between the underlying hardware and the apps you make. Apps don't communicate to the underlying hardware directly. The apps talk with the hardware via multiple system interfaces, and the interfaces make it simple to write apps for a variety of hardware capabilities. The lower layer gives the basic services, and the higher layer gives better graphics and interface services. And here is a layer, the architecture of all the layers. So the first one is Core OS, the second one is Core Services, the third one is the Media layer, and the fourth is the Cocoa Touch. So the Core layer contains the low-level features, as we mentioned before. So this is like the core Bluetooth, the Accelerate framework, the external accessory framework, security services framework, and local authentication framework. Then the core services framework contains important stuff. It contains address book, the CloudKit framework, which provides medium for moving data from your app to a cloud. It provides the core data for all of your information on your phone. And then it contains the core foundation, which are mainly just interfaces that give the fundamental data management and services features for an iOS app. And then it gives your location with the core location framework. The second layer also has core motion, which controls the access to the motion-based data. It's like with the nanotechnology. And then it has the foundation framework, the health kit, which keeps control, which manages your health, the home kit, which lets you manage and control devices that you link up with it in your home, the social frame, which lets you access your social media accounts, which is very important for a lot of people, and then the store frame kit work, which lets you buy stuff with your Apple. And then we go to the media layer, and the media layer has graphics, and then there's a lot of core parts that comprise the graphics component, such as the images, the animation, the graphics framework. In the media layer, there's also the audio framework and the video framework, and then there's core parts that make up those frameworks. And then the Cocoa Touch layer, which is the fourth layer, they have an event kit framework, which shows the standard system interfaces and provides a calendar and alterations. There's also a game kit framework, which accesses the game center and hooks data from games people have played up with each other. Then there's the iAd framework, which gives banners for advertisements, the map kit, which lets you access maps, the push kit, which gives support for apps like Skype, Viber, and WhatsApp, and a lot of Verizon-based apps as well. Then there's the Twitter framework, which supports the user interface for tweeting. And then there's the UI kit, which is the infrastructure for applying graphical, event-driven apps in the iOS. And then the UKit framework provides important functions such as multitasking support, basic app management and infrastructure, user interface management, support for touch and motion event, and it lets you cut, copy, paste, and much more. So with the wireless web, Steve Jobs actually contributed a lot to the idea of a WLAN or wireless LAN, because he always liked the ability to simply open up your laptop and get any information you can, and this plays with connecting the dots with how he wanted everything to be simple from his Buddhist experiences. And then there were also problems with Apple, especially with the peer-to-peer interactions. And peer-to-peer is computing or networking where there's distributed application architecture that partitions tasks or workloads between peers. And iCommune was this non-licensed software that let iTunes users browse public libraries of other Macintoshes over a network. So anyone using iCommune could transfer information between each other, usually pertaining to music. and the developer of iCommune, Jane Speth, was forced to take it down in 2003. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and it lets two hosts create a connection and exchange data, and it guarantees the delivery of the data so that the packets of the data will be in order in which they were sent. And in 1988, Apple released the Mac TCP, and this allowed Mac supporters to use TCP/IP on Ethernet hardware machines, so this way they could transfer information, but there were still problems with it, and it wasn't completely fixed until the classic Mac OS, which was in 1994. Today, Apple is still concerned with TCP congestion control. So with their new iOS 11, which was released in 2017, they included multipath. So this multipath allowed Wi-Fi and cellular data, and it brought it into one stream. So this way it could provide reliable congestion control, and it would be seamless handover from a cellular to Wi-Fi and back and forth. An Internet Protocol address, or IP address, is a numerical label assigned to each device connected to a computer, and a router is a network device that forwards data packets between computer networks. And you can find your Apple router IP and your own phone's IP by going into the settings and then clicking on the information in the Wi-Fi, and then it'll give you the address. So Steve Jobs, he never thought you could look forward and connect the dots like Elon Musk did. He always felt that you had to look back. So he felt that you had to find out what you're passionate about and then use that to build what you wanted to build. Elon Musk, on the other hand, knew what he wanted to build originally, and he used what he learned as his tools to connect the dots and find a solution. And thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.